What's up, everybody? We have such a special guest on this week. I am so incredibly excited, y'all. We have the Godfather of Pageantry on the Powerhouse Podcast this week. Yes, none other than Mr. Stephen Roddy, founder of Pageant Planet. Y'all, he is not only a visionary who literally made our industry what it is today, but also he is an incredibly smart and self-aware businessman. So you guys, seriously, the content that he provided, I think that this is my favorite podcast ever. It certainly is the most dense in terms of actionable steps, actionable content that you can apply to your life right now, this very second. You will definitely want to listen to this podcast like 8,000 times over and over. So incredibly excited that we got to have Stephen on the podcast today. So enjoy. Here's my interview with Stephen. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. This guest that I have on today needs absolutely no introduction for all of our followers, everybody who's listening. But I have Stephen Roddy, founder of Pageant Planet, here on the podcast today, who I like to call the father of the pageant industry. He's done so much entrepreneurially as well as just to help women accomplish their dreams, and also built this massive empire that now is this machine is kind of the grounding place of our entire industry. So Stephen, we're so privileged to have you here today. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thanks for reaching out and asking me to be a part of it. I really appreciate it. And thank you for that warm introduction.
Absolutely. So I love to start off our guest interviews with just kind of hearing about your origin story. I'd love to hear, because I've actually never heard this. How in the world did you get started in pageantry? What was your kind of inception idea to start Pageant Planet? We'd love to hear where it all started.
So if I go all the way back, I went to school to be a preacher. So not any formal education in business or anything like that. And after, while I was doing seminary and going all the way through it, I just felt like God was calling me more and more into business. And it was a childhood dream of mine to own a football team. And I wanted to own the Chicago Bears. I started talking about it when I was 12. And when I was 23, I'm like, I need to get on this dream. I've been talking about it for 11 years. And so I bought an arena football team down in Georgia. And then when I was in Georgia, I was like, who's the prettiest girl I can get to do the coin toss? Everybody, you got to have a pretty girl to do the coin toss. And so I was like, well, maybe I can hire Miss Georgia. I don't even know if that's a thing. So let me see if I can hire Miss Georgia. And so I looked into it. Sure enough, hired Miss Georgia. And you know how pageant girls kind of flock together. So there was some pageant girls that flocked there to see Miss Georgia. And then I met some of them because I was just like, well, I was friends with this one girl's parents. And I said, well, why don't you just come up in the owner suite and hang out? And she's like, well, my daughter's coming in from college. Do you care if she comes in? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. She's like, well, she has some friends too. I'm like, oh, they can all come. So I met her, and then she and I started dating. And then I saw this journey from where she went from a local title holder to a state title holder, and then competed in Miss America. And I was like, geez, this is a big thing. And so after the football team, I was looking for my next business venture, and I'm like, how much money did you spend on your evening gown? How much for coaching? And that, coupled with this kind of metamorphosis that I saw her go through, from her image to her confidence to her connections. As a business person, I had to pay to go to all these conferences, and I had to pay for coaching. And this was just very much built into the industry, and the personal development component I really loved and just fell in love with. So anyways, that started off as a blog because I didn't know anything about anything, being a straight guy in pageantry, never making money online. There was a big learning curve on it all. And she and I had this idea, and then she and I broke up, and I'm like, God, I only know her and two other people. So I better get on this industry, better get on this idea before I don't have any more contacts. And so pretty much just started from there, from a little blog, and then just interviewing people and just giving away the information for free in hopes of getting a following. I'm like, well, if I get a big enough following, I'll figure out how to make money down the road, but I'm not really interested in that, or kind of concerned about that at the moment. So that's kind of the origin, and that's how it started. I Pageant Planet because I'm like, well, I need something with the word pageant in it and something that will allow me to grow. And the Pageant Planet was available. So I bought the Pageant Planet. And that's kind of how it started. And from there, it was just grinding it out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, we have so much more in common than I even knew. Like, my parents have been in ministry my entire life. That's my background. And I've always felt called to both kind of the mountain of ministry, but also business and finance, and have had this knack for this. And so I've kind of combined those two worlds through even my coaching of like coming from a spiritual perspective and a life coaching perspective. And much like you, why I was so drawn to this industry that I kind of stumbled into is because the personal development aspect of it. And I think when you have that entrepreneurial spirit in you, you're just naturally drawn to things that can help you continue to advance and help people. So that is so cool to hear that it actually started because of like business and seminary. That's like so hits home for me. One thing that I would love to hear is, so where did Pageant Planet start? You said it started as a blog, and obviously it's like this massive empire that does so many different things. What were some of the major milestones along the way that helped it take off, that helped it grow legs and start becoming like what it is today?
The hardest thing in anything is getting started. Like, you don't know what to do. You're like, who do I contact? And everything seems fuzzy, right? And it was no different for me. Like, my social following started off as 0. My traffic started off as 0. And at that time, the football team actually failed. So that was my first real big failure experience. So I was broke when I started it. So I couldn't afford to have somebody else build the website, and I had to learn. So I went to YouTube and I built the first site. And at that time, like, getting internet inside of your apartment or your home, maybe it just seemed expensive, but it felt expensive to me. So I had a desktop computer, an Apple computer. And as I said, I couldn't afford internet. So I would take that whole desktop computer and I'd take it into a Starbucks, and I would just there, and I would work for hours, like hijacking their free Wi-Fi while nursing a tall cup of coffee. And they laughed at me and just like, okay, Steven's back. And I mean, I got to be friends with them because, like, what are you doing? And I just kind of told them my story, and I had this idea for this blog and I'm just figuring it out. And so my goal was to write 3 articles a day, every day, and never miss a day. And that was it. And I didn't know anything about pageantry. I didn't know anything about makeup or eyelashes or hair. But I'll say this, that your areas that you think are deficient can also be your strength. Because I didn't know about fake eyelashes or like extensions or spray tans, I didn't know anything about that. I was able to ask those questions and just like unabashedly just being like, well, all right, well, how do you put on fake eyelashes? And then we got a following with these very simplistic questions that most people took for granted that girls just knew. And me being a straight guy, didn't know any of it. And so we got a following. And the very first girl that we helped, I remember she emailed me, and I'm like, I don't know. I said, I don't know, but let me ask a few of the people. And so I just went to pageant coaches like yourself and was like, hey, there's this girl, she has this question, can you help? And then like you gave me the answer, and then I gave it to this girl, her name was Carolina. And I just kept doing that, was that middle person. I was like, oh, maybe that's kind of what I need to do, is just interview more coaches. Like, I don't need to be the guy that knows everything. I just need to be the guy that puts it together. So, fun story about Carolina is, like, she was at my wife and I's wedding, like many years later after she won her title and all that stuff. And we're still friends today. But so the thing is, like, you figure it out along the way. It's pretty hard to steer a parked car. But if that car is in motion, right, it's a lot easier to just steer it and move it along. And most people wait to get the journey all figured out before they begin, versus just getting started. Because if you're just getting started and you commit to a certain action daily, you'll figure the rest out along the way. Now, it'll take longer, right? Like somebody with me with no connections, no money, but just a lot of drive. It took me longer to kind of get where I am than if I had money and I had resources and those things. But it's whatever. Like if you don't have those, you'll have to work harder in the beginning than somebody else that has money, contact, or like family support. My family, my parents weren't wealthy at the time. They would be deemed wealthy now, but like they just filed bankruptcy and they're going through their own stuff. So I didn't have any support, but like regardless of what happened, whether I was sleeping on the floor or having to go to Starbucks, I still did 3 articles a day, every day, never missed a day. And, even though you're cranking out that, you still get people saying, oh, your grammar's horrible. Like you missed a comma, you misspelled a word, and there are people focus on that. And that can get you discouraged. But at the end of the day, you just stay focused on the activity. And really, I feel like God guides you along the journey.
Yeah, that is so awesome and so pertinent. Like, I think I agree with you. If there's one thing in being a successful person, it's learning how to take massive imperfect action and just like the doing. Like I was talking to one of my investors the other day and he's like, you can't, he said the most valuable thing you can find is implementers, like executors, people who will actually take action. Because so many people get locked up in their minds that they're waiting for this like perfect moment or until they're perfect or they're, God gives them a sign. It's like, no, just go get crap done. So I'd love to ask you, how did you continue to push through in that season when I'm sure that you had, many failures? I'm sure that some days you're like, why am I qualified? You're dealing with imposter syndrome or you're dealing with these different things. How did you continue to push through, and what did you learn about yourself in those beginning days of kind of that season of really building something?
I don't know if I have a magical answer for that. What I did was, because I had a commitment to myself, and there was somebody who told me this. Like I didn't just come up magically with this 3 articles a day, every day, and never miss a day. Yeah. It was told to me by this guy I met along the way, and he had made a lot of money in internet marketing. And so he's the one who told me 3 articles a day, every day, never miss a day. And I just took that to heart. And for me, I didn't have any other options. It wasn't like I had a nursing background, or like my wife's a nurse, but like a medical background or something like that. It was like this, or wait tables again, because I had to go back to waiting tables at the Cheesecake Factory. And so I was waiting tables and doing this. And I attempted to do things on the side to supplement, but I just knew that this was my thing. And really, like, since I had this dream that God gave me before I even started it, and I knew that I should be doing it. So for me, it was a business. Yes. I saw opportunity. Yes. But for me, it was a ministry. And I felt like if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be fulfilling some of my calling. And so I just felt compelled to do it. And it kept me going. And literally, when I say I was sleeping on the floor, the place I had to move into after my first business failed, it was so small I couldn't put my bed in there. So it was like I was sleeping on a sleeping bag on the floor. And then like I woke up, and like this one morning I woke up and there was just ants like all over me. I mean, like biting me and I still wrote the 3 articles a day, so, and I was going through the emotional processes as somebody would when you're going through a tough journey, and you don't feel like the needle is moving, because I worked 40 hours a week every week for about 4 years. And at the end of that 4 years, my gross revenue was around $30,000.
Wow.
So it wasn't like I was like making a lot of money, and that was gross revenue, like including tech costs and all that stuff. I made like $12, right? So it's,
I still feel that.
yeah. And you just feel like you're grinding, and it's like, is this ever going to work? And so you do have to have something bigger than money. Because if I was just doing it for money, I would have left a long time ago. And now the money will eventually come if you don't give up. And that's just a byproduct of success. But you have to be successful first before you get the money. It's not like I get the money and I'm successful. You have to get the success first, then the money follows. And that little shift helped me, because you just want to continue to add value and add service and trust God to bring the results, and get coaching whenever you can From pageants to business, you need coaches, and they really help crush the learning curve.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I believe that. I've recently gone through a season of like, I think 2020 has been so sink or swim for so many people, and you've either seen businesses or people take off, or for different circumstances. You know, some things are outside of people's control if they have a brick and mortar business. But I've been really encouraged to see how so many people have taken their personal development really seriously during this time. And one of the things that I've been encouraging a lot of my girls to do is to really look at your circle. And I think we've heard that for like so long, but for me personally, I got really, really serious about cutting out like 90% of the people in my life. And it's amazing how God will bring the right connections. And as I think we level up as people, then God trusts us to be around higher level people. And it's just this really cool ladder of how things progress. But one thing that I think a lot of girls would love to know from you is, what if they're kind of struggling with, I think a lot of girls put their identity into pageants and their identity into winning and their identity into achieving. So how do they find themselves while they're pursuing this dream without putting their entire identity in that? And if girls are kind of floundering where they're like, oh, I'm doing this pageant because like I don't maybe know what my thing is. You said you knew that this is what you're supposed to do, and so that gave you the energy to do that every day. So how do people find their thing, and how do you think people don't put their identity in that thing that they're pursuing at the same time?
So if you want something to change in your life, you have to change something in your daily habits. So for you, like let's say a contestant is competing and she feels like she's getting too wrapped up in pageants and it's like affecting her self-esteem. It's not the pageant's fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's your fault, right? It's not you, the coach, but it's the contestant's fault. So taking radical ownership, it's like there's nothing that's happening to you in this world that you don't ultimately have control over. Feeling like the way someone's treating you, walk away. If a pageant is chipping away at your self-esteem, there's like literally thousands of other ones out there. You can find another one. So like you have more control over your life than what you give yourself credit. But the problem is the answer isn't always surface level. So it's like, because the answer just doesn't smack us in the face, we don't dive deep and ask the hard questions. So you kind of want to treat yourself like a child and just say, this pageant is hurting my self-esteem. Okay, why? Well, it's hurting my self-esteem because the director doesn't give me proper accolades. Okay, why does that matter? It matters because I feel like I need their support or I need their accolades. Well, why does that matter? You know, until you get to the heart of it, and maybe it's like, at the end of the day, I just don't feel good about myself, or I don't feel like I'm worth it, or I don't feel fill in the blank. And it's like, okay, great. Like, it doesn't matter because it's all just made up stuff anyways. Like, we're born with two inherent fears. And like, it's fear of loud noises. I think the other thing is like fear of falling is the other one. Those are the only two fears that we're born with. Every other one we've learned through the process. So this whole feeling of like, you're not good enough, or I feel like I don't fit in, or I'm fearful that someone's going to reject me, that's a learned behavior. Anything learned can be unlearned. And the reason why we're scared of loud noises and falling is obviously that's kind of protective mechanism, right? Like, don't run towards the loud car or crawl towards a loud car when you're a baby. Don't crawl towards the edge. So God did that to protect us. But so if you identify the problem and you get really real with yourself, because so one of the things I got real with myself on is I wanted to make a certain amount of money. I'm like, well, why does this matter? And then I, like, after years, and that goal just eluded me. And I kept asking myself, why? And then I got to the core of it. I'm like, oh, if I don't make this amount of money, I don't feel like a man. Because if I didn't make this amount of money, then I didn't feel like I was fulfilling my role as a man so I could support a wife. Not that the wife didn't have to work. Like, I don't care. My wife owns a successful business. She works, but it didn't matter about that. I just needed to feel like I could contribute, because I knew in my heart that like I couldn't attract the kind of woman that I wanted to if I didn't make a certain amount of money, right? And the amount of money doesn't even have to be big. It just has to be significant to you. So for the contestant or the girl who feels like I am feeling basically less than because of the pageant, again, it's not the pageant's fault. Get to the heart of it, and then adjust something in your daily habit that counteracts that. And one of the things that I did, I found refuge in, is reading. And so every day, never miss a day, is I basically read for 15 minutes a day, minimum. And it's like, whether it's in the morning, afternoon, at night, and I've been doing that since I was 20. So if you add it up, if you do that 15 minutes a day for 10 years, you have the equivalent of a master's degree in whatever you've read in. So if you do that in the area of self-confidence and you pick up books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, or there's a great book, it's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. And it's written by a woman. Her name's eluding me, but if you Google, it'll pop up. But I just love the playful nature and how she approaches life. Things like that will teach you just how powerful you are, which will have a direct impact on your self-confidence. But it's 15 minutes a day. It's not like it's this massive investment of time, but you create this habit pattern of bettering yourself. And then you start to take control of your life rather than just leaving it to the whims of someone else.
Oh, I think I heard the end of that. I think you cut out for a second. You said taking control. That's the last thing I heard.
Oh, rather than taking control of your life, rather than leaving your life to the whims of someone else.
Yeah. I was just taking notes while you were saying that. That is so good. And I love this, because some of the things that you're saying are things that I tell people all the time, but it's from a slightly different lens. But I think it's going to hit home in such a different way because people respect you and your authority. And I'm so excited. I'm like giddy right now just to hear all the reflections that we're going to get from people listening. That really blesses me. So that's, full of wisdom. That's so awesome. One of the things I would love to know, kind of shifting gears a little bit, because I'm a huge entrepreneurship nerd. Like, I want to grow a very successful multi-million-dollar business. I've known that, I guess, in myself since I was little, that I just wanted to make a really big impact. What are some of the big milestones or things that you've learned from a business perspective, starting from nothing, doing this at Starbucks, what I think is so amazing, to now growing this incredibly massive empire? Seriously. I would just love to hear entrepreneur to entrepreneur, some of the big things that you've learned along the way and why you think that it's been successful.
Well, one of the things I did is I started with the end in mind. Is before I even started Pageant Planet, I said, what did I want to get out of a company? And so I was really intentional about what did I want to wear to work? Did I want to dress up, dress down? Where did I want to work? Did I want to work out of an office, out of my home, out of a coffee shop, the beach, the mountains? How much money did I want to make? And how much time did I want to actually work per week? So I was intentional where I started about what it was that I wanted to create. And so whatever I've created with intention. And so I would say that that's an important component. The other thing is I had a strong context. You'll notice a theme in all this is I was intentional about my actions. So the context is we have everything you need to succeed in pageants. That's the context of the brand. That's our brand promise. You will find whatever you need to succeed on Pageant Planet. And we live towards that daily. And before we had all these bells and whistles that we do now, it was just a blog. And it was every article that was written, needs to help girls succeed in pageants, right? So every social media post, every blog, how does this help the girl win? Even the news things that we cover, it's from the angle of you could potentially hear this in interview. So you're still covering quote pageant news, but it's only news that potentially could be covered in pageant interview. Outside of that, we don't cover it. And from there, everything you need to succeed. And then as the company got bigger, I had to get more focused on what did I need to do? One of the things that made the brand successful in the beginning was going to pageants. I mean, I was emceeing, I was judging, I was at a different pageant every weekend from April to September for years. And then the company got bigger. I mean, just writers and social media staff, people that answers customer support. I mean, there's 10 of us. Then we've got another 7 full-time tech people, server team, accountants, all that, like just to keep the machine going. Yeah. Well, when I went away to a pageant and emceed or judged, and I was gone for a weekend, that thing, a pageant hangover is a real thing. And then so you come back on a Monday and I still had emails. And so I realized, I'm like, well, either I could continue to be like a celebrity in the niche, or I could fulfill on like what I ultimately said I wanted to do, was build like this massive pageant brand. So I stepped away from doing those appearances because it takes energy. And just like you have only so much time in the day, you have only so much energy. And so I had to conserve that so I could continue to focus on the brand as a whole, because going to a pageant where there was even 1,000 girls, I mean, it's great because I get the face-to-face interaction, but way more than 1,000 girls come to the site every day. So it's like those girls already knew about the site. And ultimately, now some of those things are a challenge, right? Because your ego's tied up with it. Your ego's tied up in being this personality, or people seeing you, getting photos, the social media posts. And sometimes I still feel like, I think I'm kind of missing out, because like all these people are at pageants. Of course, because it's like, well, I mean, I've got an ego just like everyone else. I'm like, well, I'm no longer tagged in photos, but I'm like, I don't go to pageants anymore. How can you get tagged in photos? I'm like, and I go back to like, okay, what's the ultimate goal here? Is the ultimate goal to fly around to all these pageants, or is the ultimate goal to fulfill X? So you have to make sometimes those choices, and the bigger you get, you have to just keep relinquishing your ego. One of the things that we do too within the company is every week we have staff calls, and we go round robin and we talk about what worked last week and what could be improved. And everybody has to fill out a form that says like what areas could be improved. So every week the staff is critiquing and consulting the brand, my leadership style. And so just being open with that feedback. If someone's like, I didn't like the way you talked to me, I'm like, okay, tell me more about how you didn't like the way I talked to you. And it's like, well, I didn't like the way you talked to me because it offended me because of A, B, and C. I'm like, okay, got that. All right, I'll work on that. And it's like, because I'm not immune to bad days, and I'm not immune to talking sometimes in a disrespectful manner to other people, but they keep me in check. And so having that humility and just setting that ego aside and being like, you're right, okay, I'll work on that. And then vice versa, right? Like if they do something that's like, that's not in alignment with our core values as a company, so you need to course correct or find another place to work. So those conversations also happen too. So in short, it's being intentional about what you want to create, and being as intentional in as many aspects of your business as you have functional. And second, laying aside the ego for the sake of the greater vision, which sometimes can be challenging to do. And it takes some faith to lay down that ego, because it screams really loud when it's dying.
Yeah. Wow. So good. I'm like so inspired. It's amazing. I have a question. When are you going to write a book? Because I would read it. I think you're so full of wisdom. Like, and seriously, I mean, so much of this relates to, I'm like, as you're saying this, I'm intaking it as a business owner, but I'm also intaking it of a person who just competed in a national pageant. And I'd love to hear from you how much of the entrepreneurial skills, the leadership skills that obviously you've incredibly developed over the past whatever years, and in your observation of judging and emceeing and being around pageants, how many of these entrepreneurial skills, leadership skills directly translate to who you have seen end up winning pageants, whether they carry these skills or don't carry these skills, or how much do they not apply to pageants?
Yeah. So it was interesting. The year we saw each at Miss America in 2014, I was there with Tony Bowles. I was his brand manager, and I got the unique opportunity to dress, like to be involved in dressing all of you. So what he and I both noticed was the girls who said, that's the dress I want, and made a decision, like they were definitive. I made a decision, this is what I want, and they didn't second guess it. Those were the ones who placed higher. the ones that are wishy-washy, they're analyzing and they're like, I want this one, and then they go back and forth. Like they didn't place it all. It's not across the board, but like we just noticed that there was a propensity toward it. So that's one thing. And when you're a leader, entrepreneur, you feel something, then you got to be certain about it and do it. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't course correct along the way, but you're like, this is the path. Trust me. Like we're going this way.
Yeah.
So you got to trust your instinct, one. And secondly, as an entrepreneur, you've got to lead with your customer in mind. Like basically you're selling a product. So whenever I'm creating a feature on the site, like we are coming up with on December the 22nd, the day after the Best in Pageantry. We have Best in Pageantry going on right now, whereas we feature all these girls and experts and all that like throughout the industry. But there was a big problem. I'm like, how do we solve the problem of helping contestants identify which contestants worked with which experts? Because, you know, like you made it to Miss USA and a coach who coached you when you're 3 years old was like, oh, I coached her. But it wasn't like, yeah, but you didn't coach me like when I made it to Miss USA. You coached me when I was like 12, right? So it's like, how do we solve that problem? How do we also solve the problem of which girl wore what designer, what dress, had what headshot in which year? So I create a product around that because like girls want your title, want your sister's title. Like when they're going after Miss Nebraska, USA, they're like, oh, what did Megan wear? Who'd Megan work with? So this new feature that will be launched on December 22nd, it solves all those problems. Now, I mean, the database will have to be populated, but the infrastructure is there. So because I created that with the contestant in mind, who is that's my customer. That's the person I'm attempting to win over. Yeah. The contestant who's on stage has to keep her customer in mind, which is the judge. But ultimately, what the contestant needs to keep in mind is her ultimate customer is the director. So when the contestant is in interview, when the contestant is on stage, she should first think, what does the director ultimately want? Now, what the director ultimately wants, right, is more contestants competing in their pageant. Or something like Miss USA, they can't necessarily get more contestants because contestants are capped out every year. I mean, on the state level, they can for sure, but they can get more notoriety, more brand exposure, more sponsors, more visibility on television. So when you're in interview, speaking to those things of what the director wants, because the director has a download with the judges, and the director says, all right, judging panel, this is what we're looking for from a contestant. We're looking for somebody who, like on the state level, who can go and win nationals right away. Well, why do they want the girl to win nationals right away? Because it brings more exposure to their state pageant. Therefore, they get more contestants the following year. The national pageant says, we want a girl who's camera ready, who's marketable, so that girls will want to compete holistically throughout the organization, get us more sponsors, get her more speaking engagements, so that she has this unique angle that the organization can make more money. So, because at the end of the day, this director wants to have a bigger business too. And you are interviewing, I mean, all pageantry is, it's a glorified job interview for a spokesmodel position.
Yep.
Right. So you just need to speak to what that business actually wants, which is to grow and expand their business. So you'd say, well, if you crown me, this is what I'm going to do to make sure that more contestants compete next year than they did in my year. Here's my plan, right? Because, and then judge was like, wow, she's actually got a plan. So if she wins, then this would be really good for the director. And for the Miss USA national level, like, hey, this is my plan to help you get more sponsorships, to gain traction, to get more contestants on the state level, et cetera, if you select me. And then like, wow, she's got a plan. So it's keeping your end customer in mind. I went all the way around the mulberry bush to say that, but yeah, it's keeping the end product in mind.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. So I just came out with my online course like a couple months ago, and it's brings you through everything that you need in terms of everything from mindset to personal branding and style, walking you through interview, and then in the end, like mock interviews and stuff like that. And I just so appreciate the way that you're addressing these things, because it's validating to me, because I'm like, oh, I said something like that. You know what I mean? But like, you're the expert of all experts. So it's really cool to hear it. And again, I just think it's going to be such a blessing for people. You have a profound way of making things really simple, Stephen, in a way that's probably boy brain versus girl brain too, where I'm like all over the place. But I really, really just like, seriously, it's been a blessing even to me just to hear how you land these different points. And I'm such a learner. I'm just, my brain's going to be spinning for like hours after this, but seriously, like you just carry such a wisdom that I really admire, in a way that you can, I think, take concepts that people, in pageants get so in their head about and make it about all these wrong things of like, I need to impress the judge, or I need to impress the director. And like you said, no, it's, you need to think like a business owner and what you're applying for and keep the end in mind. Like, I love how you can just wrap those points around something and make it so simple. So that's amazing. One of my last questions for you is, where do you think that pageantry is going? I'd love for you to kind of take us on a journey of how you think pageantry has changed since you've started and what you've observed, as it has been an amoeba that's kind of, here's what it was 10, 15 years ago, and where is it now? And where do you think is the future of pageantry? Where do you think it's going?
So I feel like when I first started in 2009, I only thought that I only knew about Miss America. And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of other pageants out here. So where it started in 2009, there was a lot of pageants that started. International Junior Miss, USA National Miss, they all kind of started popping up around that time, and then several others in addition. So what that's actually done is it's diluted what maybe Miss America, Miss USA, because it's created more competition in the marketplace. So if you talk to the directors of those particular pageants, that's the older guard, if you will, they'll say, oh, pageantry's dying because numbers are way down. Numbers aren't way down from what I'm seeing on a holistic scale, but numbers are down in certain pageants because it's way more competitive. And traditionally, it's been my experience that most of the directors that I deal with, they are not strong business people. They don't pay attention to the numbers or the stats. So when they're talking based on feeling. I feel like, rather than what is the data saying. Now, you're going to see these major pageants, Miss America, Miss USA, you're already starting to see it, so it's not too obvious. They're going to be off national television like before long. Because think about the things right now. The reason why Miss America was able to first get on national television is because it was the first ever like live event. It's the longest running reality television show in America, right? That's why. And then they're like, oh, bikinis on television sold. Like the guys are like there. But now everybody and their mother, they can go live on Instagram or Facebook. So reality television is just like, anybody can have a reality television show by just going live, which is why now documentaries are so popular, because they're like, we want the real, not the fake real that we see on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette and all that stuff. We want the real. So, which is why the documentaries go behind the scenes and expose the truth. And that's why, like, that's the next level. So you're going to see these pageants get off of national television, but you're going to still see a tremendous impact. And you're going to see numbers continue to rise, because what I hope happens is that these directors that, and we see a lot of them because we see the behind the scenes with the directors, the ones that are not friendly, not professional, those will get weeded out. And with a resource like Pageant Planet, where girls can now leave reviews, and it's like, I did not have a great experience with this pageant. That wasn't there before, because you can't go on to Google and like leave a review for a pageant because it doesn't have an address. So you can't find it on Google Maps. So that wasn't possible, but now it is. And so more and more girls are like voicing their opinion, like, this was not a great experience. And it's like, that's great, because we need to weed those people out. So more and more pageants will shift down. And then based on the features that what we have right now 500 girls a week that reach out to us that says, we are looking for pageants. Please connect us with a pageant director. 500 girls a week. And we have a whole lead generating system that basically directors, they log on, they say, I'm looking for contestants between 18 and 24 from the United States. Those leads come in, we match that with the pageant, and the pageant can claim that lead and then contact out to that contestant. That's how I know like how many leads that we're getting in. So I know that the industry isn't hurting because of the amount of volume, and I could scale that up way higher, but the directors aren't taking advantage of those particular leads right now. So there's no need to do that. So the industry is going to continue to grow, but it might not grow on national television, but it will continue to grow because it is growing. It's just spread out more over more pageants.
Yep. Totally makes sense. I love your perspective on that. And I agree with you. I think, especially after COVID and people learning to be so self-reliant and self-sufficient. And also I agree with you completely that I think we've kind of turned a corner where we're in like so immersed in this digital age now that people are so yearning for authentic connection. I think that that's going to reflect in pageants. I think it has been reflective of the national title holders that we've chosen in our major pageants. I think it's reflective of why even like cable TV and I think local news is going to be going to the wayside very quickly as well, because people want the authentic and they want it now. And you're right, like Instagram Live, I remember when that came out. When I was in Nebraska, we didn't even have Instagram stories back then. And that's been a major way that I've been able to build my brand and also increase my confidence and my extemporaneous speaking skills. So I think it'll be really interesting from a business perspective to see how major industries that were untouchable 5 years ago, education, news, media, will continue to have to morph themselves and reinvent themselves. And I think we as individuals are learning how to do the same thing as well. I just interviewed yesterday one of the top guys who teaches people how to get famous on TikTok. And he worked for Gary Vee for a while and never had social media on his own. And he was saying, no, like seriously, like it's literally one of the easiest things in the world right now. And gave some really specific strategies, but he talked about that too, of just how people's way that they're consuming media is completely different. And so I'm excited. It obviously could be a scary thing too, because you want to stay on top of the game. But I think I'm personally excited because I love the real. I can't stand when I can kind of sniff a rat of inauthenticity. I'm like, that's just not for me. So I really appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with what you're saying.
Awesome. So kind of in closing, I always end the show with, I'd love for you to just give some advice or one major thing that maybe for women who are in pageants that you wish that they would know either about themselves or about pageantry or about anything kind of involving our industry. If there's anything else that you'd like to say or advice you'd like to give, I'd love for you to give that to our audience.
One of the things I would encourage you to do is to realize the difference between what happened and story. So much of our lives, something will happen to us. Megan, you will say, oh, you dog, right? And then that's what she said. Megan said, you dog. And then what happens is from my previous experience, I will create this whole story around it. Like, Megan doesn't like me. She thinks that I'm a jerk. She thinks I'm irresponsible, all these things. And realistically, you didn't say any of that. You just said, you are a dog. Likewise, like you text a guy, you text a sponsor, the sponsor doesn't text you back, the guy doesn't text you back. It's like, he doesn't like me. Why did I text that? That was a dumb move. All that story. It's not actually what happened. You text, he didn't respond. He or she didn't respond. And so it takes the emotion out of it so that you can just see the situation for what it is and not put any additional meaning in it. Because realistically, nothing in life has meaning unless you give it meaning. So you don't win a pageant, that has zero meaning unless you give it meaning. You create the meaning that you're not good enough, that you need to look different, that you're not as good as the girl that won or whatever. You create that meaning. That doesn't mean anything. Like that's all story. What it meant, the only thing that happened is you competed in a pageant, you got first runner up. Everything else is story. My dress wasn't good enough, that's story. Or anything that the coach says, it's just their opinion, it's story. What happened was you competed in a pageant, you got first runner up. You texted the sponsor, they didn't text back. You texted a guy, he didn't text back. You made a request of someone, they said no. That's it. So learning the difference between those will give you a lot more peace as you go out through your life, and especially in the pageant journey.
Wow. I love it. That is so good. Thank you for that. Genuinely, thank you so much, Stephen. I so appreciate you giving us some of your time. I'd love for you, I think people already know, but in closing, I'd love for you to tell everybody where they can contact you, how they can contact you, Pageant Planet, all that kind of stuff, and whatever else you'd like to say.
Yeah, well, I would encourage you to, if you're listening and if you're competing, or even if you're not, to go to pageantplanet.com and create your contestant profile. On the contestant profile, through your contestant profile, you can host a fundraiser. We call it Go Crown Me instead of GoFundMe. So you can do that. Yeah, and you can hold little fundraisings. So where you can raise money towards a dress, towards your shoes, towards your pageant entry fees, all of that. If you have any old dresses or jewelry or shoes in your closet, sell them through our shop. You can upload it right there and you sell it. You ship it out. Or if you're looking for some of those items, you can purchase it. We guarantee that those items will sell out or will arrive exactly how it's shown in the picture, or we will refund your money. And you can do a lot of other fun things. I'm probably just missing because I'm not on the spot, or I'm on the spot. But yeah, and I thank you, Megan. A mentor told me once, he said, the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of questions that you ask. And so if you gained a lot of information or valuable information from this podcast, that's because you've asked quality questions and that you have a quality platform. So congratulations for you on your success in the American system, the USA system, in your coaching, and on this podcast.
Thank you so much. That's going to make me cry. So I super appreciate it. Thank you everybody for listening. And with that, we'll see you guys next week.
Well, thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. If this has been a blessing to you, which we certainly hope that it has, we'd love for you just to take a second and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. The more people that we can reach, the more people that we can get set free and growing in their leadership and communication and rewiring those negative, toxic mindsets that are holding them back from their future. We're so honored to be a coach and a mentor in your life. I take that very, very personally. And if you are not a part of one of our programs yet, either the Inner Circle or the Interview Mastery Academy, we are inviting you to take the leap and be a part of our family. So in the show notes every single week or on our website, powerhousepageantry.com/podcast, you guys can find a super secret special link to a next step call, which is absolutely free with me, that you can book at any time. You'll fill out a short application and select a time on my calendar, and we'd love to chat with you to see if you're a good fit to join one of our programs. We'd love to help you in your pageant prep journey to not only mastering interview, but becoming the absolute best version of yourself that you've always wanted to be. So again, thank you so much for being a part of our Powerhouse family. Thank you so much for listening. And with that, we'll see you guys next week.